There was a time when her skin warmed under my touch, when I could trace a fingertip along her shoulder and feel her lean in, not away. But tonight, when I reached out to brush the stray hair off Lily's collarbone, she flinched. Not much, just a quick, involuntary twitch, but enough. Enough to punch the air right out of my lungs. We were sitting on the couch, halfway through a movie we'd both seen before, something forgettable that was supposed to fill the silence. She had her legs tucked under her, arms folded loosely across her chest. Not snuggled into me like she used to, not laughing at the dumb one-liners like she once did. And then came that flinch. I pulled my hand back like I'd touched a hot stove. Tried to laugh it off, though nothing about it was funny. "You okay?" I asked. The question felt too small for what I was really trying to say. She gave me a quick glance, her lips parting as if she might offer a real answer. Instead, she gave a weak smile. "Yeah, just tired." Tired. That word again. She was always tired lately. Tired when I tried to talk. Tired when I leaned in for a kiss. Tired when I suggested a walk, or a dinner out, or even just a shared cup of tea on the patio after work. I told myself it was the stress from the merger at her job, or the allergies, or maybe hormones. Anything, really, anything that wasn't what I was starting to suspect. I tried to refocus on the screen, but the images blurred. I couldn't stop thinking about that twitch of her shoulder. That brief, but loaded motion, like I was a stranger reaching too far. The distance between us was no longer emotional. It was physical now. Palpable. I glanced sideways, watching her from the corner of my eye. Her posture was rigid, like she wanted to disappear into the couch cushion. And when her phone buzzed, just once, her entire body tensed before she casually reached for it and flipped it face down on the cushion beside her. No glance at the screen. No mention of who it was. Just that instinctive motion. Hide the light, conceal the message. She hadn't used to be like that. I let a few minutes pass before I stood up. "I'm gonna get some water," I muttered, more to the silence than to her. She nodded, eyes still locked on the screen, but I don't think she was really watching. I stepped into the kitchen, the soft clink of glass echoing too loudly in the quiet house. Everything felt still and sterile, the kind of silence that hums in your bones when something isn't right. I leaned against the counter, staring at the glass in my hand. My thumbs circled the rim, again and again. I thought about the way Lily used to greet me at the door, how her eyes used to light up, how her fingertips would rest on my chest as she kissed me hello. Not lately. Now the only thing that greeted me at the door was the smell of dinner she didn't wait to eat with me and the ghost of a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. We'd been together 8 years, married for 6, long enough to weather stress, dead bedrooms, career pivots, all of it. We weren't one of those couples who argued constantly or threw dishes, but we also weren't holding hands anymore. And maybe that was worse. She came into the kitchen a moment later, her bare feet soft against the hardwood. She didn't look at me, just opened the fridge and grabbed a LaCroix. "I'm gonna head up early," she said, cracking the can. "That meeting tomorrow is gonna be brutal." She left before I could reply, and I heard her feet climb the stairs, slow, deliberate steps like she was walking away from something she couldn't name. Alone again, I sat at the kitchen table, my fingers tapping a slow rhythm against the wood. It had been months since we'd had sex, and I don't mean just physically. We hadn't wanted each other. Or at least, I'd wanted her. I still did. Even now, as I sat there feeling the sting of her flinch, I wanted to crawl into bed beside her, wrap my arm around her waist, feel the soft curve of her hip settle into me. But that space had been closed off, roped off. Do not enter. And here's the thing, sex wasn't just sex. It was how we used to know we were okay. We'd argue, make up, and somewhere between tangled sheets and whispered apologies, we'd remind each other that we were still in this together. That hadn't happened in months. Our arguments didn't end in anything anymore, just silence or distraction. I finally went upstairs. The bedroom door was closed, but I could see the soft glow of her bedside lamp leaking through the crack at the bottom. I hesitated before pushing it open. She was already in bed, the covers pulled to her chest, her phone in her hands. She didn't look up. "Good night," I said. She glanced at me, then back to the screen. "Night." I stepped into the bathroom, closed the door, and leaned against the sink. I stared at myself in the mirror. Tired eyes, tense jaw, a man unraveling by degrees. She used to call me her constant, her anchor. Now I felt like the weight dragging her down. As I shut off the light, and crawled into bed beside her. The silence settled heavy between us. She didn't shift toward me, didn't reach for my hand under the covers. She just turned slightly, facing the wall. I lay there for a long time, wide awake in the dark. My hand hovered a few inches from her back, wanting to touch, to connect, to say something without words. But I didn't, because I couldn't take another flinch. The idea hit me while I was brushing my teeth. A weekend away, just the two of us. No work, no distractions, no awkward silences weighed down by routine. Something small and quiet. Somewhere we could reset. I rinsed, spat, and stared into the mirror. My reflection didn't blink. It was like he was waiting for me to catch up to what he already knew. Still, I pitched it at breakfast. Lily stood at the counter, scrolling through her phone with one hand and absently stirring her tea with the other. She wore the soft gray sweater I used to love on her, the one that slipped off one shoulder and used to drive me crazy. Now it just looked like a curtain she was hiding behind. "How do you feel about getting away this weekend?" I asked, pretending to be casual, even though my pulse was racing. She blinked up at me. "What kind of getaway?" "Something simple. There's this cabin in Pine Hollow, the one we stayed at 2 winters ago. I checked, and it's available." She frowned slightly, setting her spoon down. "This weekend?" "Yeah, just us. No distractions." Lily hesitated, eyes darting back to her phone. "I don't know, Ethan. Work's been insane lately. I'm already behind on the quarterly numbers." "You'd have Wi-Fi there. You could still check in. But the point is just to be away, together." I gave her a smile, the kind I hadn't used in a while, open, hopeful. "We need this." Her lips pressed together, not quite a frown, not quite a refusal. "Let me think about it." I knew what that meant. And sure enough, she texted me later that day from work. "Hey, talk to my manager. Can't really take time off right now. Maybe another weekend?" I stared at the screen for a long time, my thumb hovering over the reply button. Maybe another weekend might as well have been maybe never. That's what I felt, a gentle, polite wall going up. Again, I didn't respond. That night, I came home to find her already in bed, a book resting on her chest. She didn't look up when I entered. I stood in the doorway longer than necessary, waiting to be acknowledged. She turned a page, so I turned down the hall and entered the guest room. It wasn't a decision, not really. More like a reflex, like pulling your hand from a flame. The guest bed creaked under me. It was stiff, cold, unfamiliar. The sheets still smelled faintly of dryer sheets, and the closet held a box of Christmas ornaments we never got around to hanging last year. I lay there in the dark and listened to the sound of silence seeping through the walls. In the morning, I woke up before her. I didn't make coffee. I didn't wait in the kitchen like I used to. I got dressed quietly, grabbed my bag, and left. No note. We stopped syncing our schedules after that. She began working later and later. "Running projections," she said, though her eyes wouldn't meet mine when she said it. I started hitting the gym after work. Sometimes I went to the diner on 7th and just sat with a sandwich in my thoughts, staring at the swirl of people who looked more connected than we were. We still ate dinner together occasionally, a shared silence punctuated by clinking forks and muted sighs. I once caught her watching a video on her phone, her lips curled into a small, secret smile. She quickly swiped it away when I came near. "Something funny?" I asked. She shook her head. "Just a meme. Dumb." I didn't push. I didn't want to know what, or who, made her smile like that. We argued once. Not even a real fight. Just a loop of tired sentences. "You're never home." "I'm working." "You're not with me, even when you are." "You think I don't notice the way you've checked out too?" "Maybe because I got tired of being the only one trying." "Oh, now you're the victim?" It ended the way they always do. Unresolved, exhausted, and quiet. Words flung like pebbles that didn't leave bruises, just cracks. I went back to the guest room that night. She didn't ask me to stay. I think part of me hoped she would. Even just a hand on my arm, a whisper of, "Don't go." But there was nothing. I started waking up earlier than usual, slipping out before she stirred. I ate alone. I showered in the hall bathroom. It felt stupid and dramatic, but it also felt like survival. If I didn't change the routine, I was going to suffocate. On Thursday, I brought home takeout from the Thai place she loved. I didn't text her, just set it on the counter and waited, pretending to scroll through emails. She came in an hour later, heels clicking across the floor, the scent of her perfume hitting me like a memory I hadn't earned. "Hey," I said casually. "I picked up dinner." From Ba and Tai. She glanced at the bags, then at me. Oh, thanks. I figured we could. I already ate, she interrupted. I swallowed. With who? She blinked. Colleagues. We had a thing after the strategy meeting. A thing. She said it like it was a paperclip. I nodded. Got it. She walked past me, and I watched her disappear into the bedroom, leaving the food untouched. That night, I left the house. Drove for hours with no destination. Just me, the hum of the tires, and the voice in my head repeating a question I wasn't ready to answer. Is this the end, or just the beginning of the unraveling? The invitation came from Caleb and Jenna, mutual friends who still thought of Lily and me as a unit. They didn't see the strain beneath our skin, or maybe they did and hoped a dinner party would fix what therapy hadn't. Just a few of us, Jenna had said over the phone. You guys need to get out of the house. Lily accepted before I had the chance to hesitate. That should have been my first clue. Friday night arrived. Lily wore a black dress with an open back she hadn't touched in years. Her hair was styled, not messy bun styled, but date night styled. Lipstick. The scent of something new and expensive clung to her skin. She looked stunning, no denying it. And I felt like the plus one to my own wife. You look amazing, I said as we got into the car. She gave a quick smile, not even a thank you. Just a brief nod, like it cost her something to acknowledge me. The drive was short but stiff. I kept glancing at her profile, trying to read something. Warmth, guilt, connection. But her face was locked into neutral. She fiddled with her phone more than usual. When I asked who she was texting, she said, just Jenna. Final directions. Jenna lived in the same place for 6 years. We arrived to wine glasses clinking and soft jazz playing over wireless speakers. Familiar faces. Forced smiles. Everyone was playing their roles, and I tried too. I shook hands, laughed when prompted, made light conversation about house prices and vacation plans. All the while, I kept noticing how Lily was glowing. Not because of me, but despite me. Halfway through dinner, the conversation turned to relationships. Caleb, halfway through his third glass of wine, was rambling about how kids had ruined his sex life. We used to go at it like wild animals, he said, grinning at his wife. Now I'm lucky if she doesn't elbow me in the ribs for snoring. Everyone laughed, even Jenna. Then someone asked, what about you two? Still keeping the spark alive? I smiled politely. We're managing. That's when Lily laughed. A short, sharp thing that didn't match her usual tone. Oh, please. Ethan's idea of keeping the spark alive is booking a cabin in the middle of nowhere with no hot tub and no room service. The table laughed. I froze. I mean, she went on, swirling her wine. It was sweet. In a Boy Scout meets IKEA catalog kind of way. But romance doesn't mean building a fire and staring at trees. Jenna tried to defuse the awkwardness with a joke, but the sting had landed. I glanced around and saw it in their eyes. Amusement at my expense. I looked at Lily. Her gaze didn't meet mine. She just sipped her wine, satisfied. The rest of dinner passed in a blur. Conversations floated around me, but I wasn't really there. I watched Lily, how she leaned in to talk to Greg, how she touched his forearm briefly during a joke. I didn't know if it meant anything, but the casual intimacy scraped at something raw in me. When dessert came, I excused myself and stepped out onto the back patio. The night air was cool, almost too cold for October. I welcomed it. It gave me something sharp to feel. I sat on a bench, watching my breath curl in the air, letting the laughter inside dull into background noise. I could feel the edges of myself fraying, not in rage, but in that quieter, deeper erosion. The kind that doesn't shout. The kind that just sinks. After a few minutes, the door opened behind me. Footsteps. You okay? Jenna's voice. I nodded. Just needed some air. She sat beside me, pulling her coat tight. Lily went a little hard on you in there. I gave a hollow laugh. She's been practicing. Jenna hesitated. I didn't want to say anything, but she's been different lately. More distant. Yeah, I said. I've noticed. She talks about work a lot. Stays late. Caleb says she's always texting during their planning meetings. My stomach tightened. Texting who? Jenna looked uncomfortable. I don't know, but it's not just work stuff. Look, if something's going on, you deserve to know. I nodded slowly, keeping my face composed even as my mind spun with possibilities I didn't want to name yet. We sat in silence for a while. Then she touched my hand gently. You're a good guy, Ethan. Don't let her rewrite the story. That hit harder than I expected. When I walked back inside, Lily was laughing at something someone said, her posture relaxed, her expression carefree. Like nothing about our life was coming apart. Like I hadn't just been gutted on the patio by the possibility that the woman I loved was slowly, systematically erasing me. We left 20 minutes later. The car ride home was silent. When we pulled into the driveway, I killed the engine but didn't move. She reached for the door handle. "Do you even like me anymore?" I asked, staring straight ahead. She froze, slowly turned toward me. "What? You mock me in front of our friends. You barely talk to me unless it's about the thermostat or what's for dinner. You flinch when I touch you." She said nothing. "Do you like me, Lily? Not love. Not tolerate. Like." Her silence stretched out between us, thick and suffocating. Finally, she whispered, "I don't know." I nodded. That was somehow worse than a no. She got out of the car without another word. I didn't follow. That night, I slept in the guest room again. Not out of protest, not out of pride, but because something had shifted. Something final. I didn't want to crawl into a bed next to someone who didn't know if she even liked me. And I sure as hell didn't want to wake up next to her pretending otherwise. I stopped asking questions. Not because I didn't have them. I had hundreds, growing like mold in the silence between us. But because the answers, if they came, would be worse than the guessing. So I watched instead. There's a kind of peace in observing, even when the thing you're watching is the slow collapse of your own life. It was a Thursday. I left work early, claiming a dentist appointment I didn't have. I just couldn't sit under fluorescent lights anymore pretending to care about email chains and project plans when all I could think about was her. Lily. And the way she laughed at Greg's joke last week with her fingers resting on his wrist like they had a history I didn't know about. I wasn't planning on following her. Not really. I was driving, no direction in mind, when I saw her car, that slate gray Audi I bought her 2 birthdays ago, parked outside a tiny cafe on the edge of downtown. A place neither of us had ever been. There was something intimate about it. Not the place itself, but the moment. It was 3:30 in the afternoon. Not dinner. Not lunch. Not coffee break. A pocket of time that felt secret. I pulled over and stayed in my car, angled just enough to see inside the window. There she was. My wife. And across from her, a man. He was tall, lean. Wore a dark blazer like he didn't know it fit him too well. His fingers brushed Lily's when he handed her something. A phone? A napkin? I couldn't tell. But she smiled. Not the polite kind she gave me when I handed her coffee in the morning. This one had teeth. Then she laughed. Head tilted back, eyes shining. The kind of laugh I hadn't heard in months, maybe a year. I didn't move. Didn't blink. They sat close. Shoulders almost touching. Her foot reached toward his under the table and didn't pull back. That was all I needed. I didn't burst in. Didn't storm the glass and demand answers. I just sat there and felt something break softly inside me. Not a snap, not a scream, just the quiet crack of something long under strain finally giving way. He walked her to her car after. I watched as she touched his arm. I watched as he leaned in. Too close, far too close, and said something near her ear that made her grin like a teenager. And then she left. I followed him. At first, it felt like madness. But something primal had taken over. Curiosity mixed with rage, diluted just enough by restraint. I trailed him through traffic, keeping 2 cars back. He wasn't heading toward an office or a hotel. He drove to a residential street in an older neighborhood, tree-lined, quiet, expensive in a low-key way. He parked in front of a red brick townhouse and walked inside. I waited. 10 minutes passed. No sign of Lily. No sign of anyone else. I scribbled the address on a napkin and drove home, my mind spinning. Later that night, after Lily claimed she had to work late, I pulled out my laptop and searched property records. It didn't take long. The house belonged to Adrienne Wells. I froze. That name meant nothing to me. But then I found her. Nora Wells. Listed as co-owner. Same last name. Same address. Wife. Adrienne was married. And my heart did something strange in my chest. Not a twist, not a drop. Just a pause, like it needed a second to comprehend the scope of what I'd stepped into. So this wasn't just betrayal. This wasn't just some passing fling with a stranger. This was a double life. Lily wasn't just erasing me. She was stepping into someone else's story, someone else's home, someone else's marriage. And suddenly, the edges of my pain sharpened into something useful. I didn't want vengeance. Not yet. Not even answers. I wanted understanding. And maybe, just maybe, I wanted an ally. The next day, I stood in front of the townhouse. 9 a.m. No car in the driveway. I held my phone in one hand, the napkin in the other, rereading the name over and over like it would offer me some kind of clarity. The door opened behind me. A woman in jeans and a sweater stepped out, carrying a thermos and an overstuffed purse. She was striking, not in the exaggerated magazine way, just composed. Tired, maybe, but graceful. Strong in that quiet, tired way women get when they've held things together too long. I knew it was her before she even looked up. "Nora," I said gently. She turned, startled, clutched her keys a little tighter. "I'm sorry," I said quickly, raising both hands. "My name is Ethan. I think our spouses know each other." Her face stiffened, instantly guarded. "Excuse me. I believe your husband is seeing my wife." Silence. The air between us thickened. "You're Lily's husband," I said. "I saw them yesterday. At a cafe." I didn't want to assume anything, but then I saw him walk into your house. I looked up the records. Nora stared at me for a long, unblinking moment. Then, slowly, she let out a breath. "Adrian told me he was mentoring someone at work, helping with a project." I nodded. "I think that's part of it." A pause. Then, "Do you have proof?" "Not yet. Just instincts. And timing. And 100 little things that don't add up anymore." She closed her eyes for a second, like she was trying to hold something in, or maybe trying not to fall apart right there on the porch. "I didn't come to fight," I said. "I just thought, if there's truth to this, we deserve to know it. All of it." She opened the door again, looked at me for a long time, then stepped aside. "Come in," she said quietly. "Let's find out what we're dealing with." Nora's house was quiet. Too quiet. She led me into the kitchen, where the light from a single window painted a warm square across the hardwood floor. Everything in the room was meticulous, not staged, but curated, lived in by someone who valued order. There was a faint scent of jasmine tea lingering in the air. Her calm exterior didn't match the storm I imagined churning inside. We sat across from each other at the table. "I still don't know if I believe it," she said finally, her voice steady but low. "But I think I've known something was wrong for a while. Just didn't want to face it." I nodded. "Same." She studied me for a moment. "You said you saw them together?" "Yeah. Yesterday. Small cafe. The way they were looking at each other, it wasn't work. It wasn't casual." She looked down, fingers tightening around her mug. "Adrian's always been charming. Too charming sometimes. But I never thought." "You don't want to believe it until you can't not believe it," I said. "That's where I'm at now. I guess I've been holding on to the version of him from years ago. Before the late nights. The secret of phone habits. The last-minute cancellations. The client dinners where he comes home reeking of cologne that isn't mine." Her voice cracked on the last part, but she didn't let the emotion break through. She breathed through it, steel behind her eyes. "I don't want a confrontation that becomes some ugly explosion," she said. "I don't want tears or screaming or him turning it into my fault." "Then let's not give them any room to lie," I said. "No ambiguity. No denials. We gather the truth, and when we present it, it's undeniable." She tilted her head. "You mean spy on them?" "I mean watch. Listen. Document. No dramatics. No revenge porn nonsense. Just facts. Let them hang themselves with their own rope." Nora let out a slow breath. "I never imagined I'd be sitting at this table planning how to catch my husband cheating. I didn't imagine I'd be here either. But we're here." A pause stretched between us. "Finally," she said, "then we do it. Together." We worked out a plan. Nothing theatrical. Just calm, methodical truth-seeking. We started by syncing our schedules. She told me Adrian had a recurring, working lunch every Tuesday and Thursday, always between 2 and 4 p.m. Lily, coincidentally, had been blocking off the same chunks of time on her calendar, telling me she was in client development meetings. We knew where to look. I pulled out my phone and opened my photo app. "I took these yesterday," I said, sliding it across the table. She picked it up, eyes scanning. Her hand trembled just slightly. In the image, Lily was smiling. Adrian's hand was resting on the table between them, palm up, like he was waiting for hers to find it. It hadn't, not in that frame. But the next one caught it. Fingers interlaced. No room for interpretation. Nora didn't cry. She closed her eyes for a second, set the phone down gently, and sat back. I want to be angry, she said quietly. I want to throw something or scream. But all I feel is tired. Yeah, I said. It's like your body already processed the grief before your mind caught up. She looked at me. What are you going to do? With Lily? I don't know yet. But I want her to look me in the eye and admit it. Not deny. Not cry her way out. I want the truth. Raw and clean. Nora nodded slowly. Me too. There was a moment of stillness between us. Not uncomfortable. More like an agreement sealed in shared pain. She was composed, thoughtful. Strong in the way people get when the ground has already given way and all that's left is standing anyway. As I stood to leave, she followed me to the door. You sure you're okay doing this? I asked. She looked me square in the eye. I won't be okay either way, but I'd rather know the truth than live in this fog any longer. I gave a tight nod. Then we meet again Monday. Same time. Monday. I turned to go, then paused. You're brave, you know. Her mouth quirked into a wry smile. I'm not. I'm just done being lied to. Same. Exactly the same. That night, Lily came home late again. She didn't kiss my cheek or ask about my day. She just offered a breezy hey and disappeared into the bedroom. I listened to the shower run. I listened to the soft thump of a cabinet closing. I sat in the living room with the lights off, staring at the blank TV screen. There was a time I'd have waited up for her. A time I'd have asked questions, tried to bridge the distance with awkward attempts at connection. That time had passed. Now I was just watching, gathering, waiting for the moment when the silence we both maintained would finally break. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want chaos. I wanted clarity. And I knew now, I wouldn't be getting it from Lily. I'd be getting it with Nora. She knocked at exactly 6. Not 6:01. Not fashionably late. On the dot, the kind of timing that said this wasn't a social call. I knew Nora would be precise. I appreciated that about her. She was becoming something I hadn't expected in all this. Not just an ally, but an anchor. I opened the door before she could knock a second time. She stood there in a long coat, simple jeans, a navy sweater, no makeup, no performance. Just the clarity of someone who had accepted the worst and decided to walk through it anyway. Right on time, I said. She didn't smile, just nodded once and stepped inside. Lily was in the kitchen. She had just started boiling pasta, humming something tuneless under her breath. For a brief moment, she looked normal, domestic. The illusion of a life we no longer shared simmering on the stove like it could feed something between us. She turned when she heard footsteps and froze. I saw it happen in real time. The blood drained from her face. Her hand stopped mid-stir. The spoon clattered into the pot. Who's this? She asked, but her voice had already collapsed inward. She knew. She didn't need an introduction. I stepped forward, slow and steady. Lily, this is Nora, Adrian's wife. Lily blinked rapidly, as if trying to reset her vision and rerun the moment from a different script. One where this made sense. One where she wasn't caught. Nora stayed near the door, composed. Her hands didn't shake. We'd like to talk, I said. Lily looked between us, then crossed her arms over her chest. This is insane, she muttered. What? You've been spying on me. No, I said. Observing. There's a difference. Unbelievable. Her voice was sharper now, more defensive. The part of her that hated being cornered was rising, the part that would rather deflect than confess. Nora stepped forward, calm and deliberate. Lily, I'm not here to scream at you. I'm not here to insult you. But I do deserve the truth. Lily opened her mouth, probably to deny it, to spin something. But then I pulled the envelope from the counter and placed it in front of her. Photos, times, dates. The one of her and Adrian holding hands across the table. The one of them entering the boutique hotel near Ninth. The timestamp at the bottom of the page matched the evening she told me she had a team dinner. Lily's lips parted. Her eyes scanned the first few images and all that resistance, all that energy, it left her. She sat down and said nothing for a long, heavy moment. Then finally, she whispered, I didn't plan for this to happen. I felt that line hit the room like cold water. The classic defense. As if affairs were hurricanes, natural disasters that you simply weathered, not choices you walked toward again and again. But it did happen, I said. She looked at me, her voice barely audible. Yes. Nora didn't move, didn't breathe, just absorbed it. How long? She asked. Lily swallowed. 6 months. Maybe a little more. My chest tightened, not with rage, but with confirmation. All the weird moments, the late nights, the shifting affection, 6 months. Half a year of being lied to while she shared pieces of herself with someone else. Nora let out a quiet exhale, like someone putting down a weight they'd carried too long. Lily looked at me again, eyes red now. I didn't mean for it to be this. It was supposed to be a distraction, a mistake that ended. But you kept making the mistake, I said. Over and over. She nodded, slowly, like each motion cost her more strength than she had. Nora turned to her, voice steady. Adrian's things will be outside our house by tomorrow. I'll text him to come pick them up. I suggest you do the same with Ethan. Lily blinked, caught off guard. Wait, what? I looked her square in the eye. You're going to pack your things, Lily. Tonight. You'll leave this house. I'm not asking. I'm telling you. Ethan. 1 hour, I said. That's what you get. I won't fight. I won't scream. But you need to go. She stood slowly, shell-shocked. Where am I supposed to go? Maybe Adrian has room. The silence that followed was thick, final. She opened her mouth again, but Nora was already turning toward the door. Thank you, I said to her quietly. Nora paused, gave me a nod, and walked out without looking back. I stood in the doorway for a while, not moving, just breathing. Behind me, Lily began to move around the bedroom, slowly packing. I didn't watch. I didn't need to. She left just before 7. No tearful goodbye. No begging. She didn't slam the door or even close it hard. Just left. And when the silence came rushing in behind her, it didn't feel like grief. It felt like air. I stood in the kitchen for a long time, leaning against the counter, letting the quiet sink into my bones. No shouting. No shattered dishes. No violence. Just truth. Like sunlight through a window you forgot you had. That night, I slept in the master bedroom again. Alone. And for the first time in months, I didn't wake up once. I didn't cry when she left. I thought I might. Maybe after the adrenaline wore off and the silence settled in. But instead, there was a strange kind of stillness. Not numbness. Not even pain. Just quiet. And peace, if I'm being honest. Not joy. Not relief. But peace. I stood in the foyer after she left, listening to the sound of her car pull out of the driveway. I didn't rush to the window to watch her go. I didn't lock the door behind her like a dramatic exclamation mark. I just stood there. The house was still. Too still. The kind of stillness that had once made me uneasy, back when it meant something was wrong. But now it meant I was alone. And for the first time in months, that didn't feel like a punishment. It felt like permission. That night, I didn't clean up the kitchen. I didn't make dinner. I poured myself a drink, just one, and sat out back, watching the wind move through the trees. No music. No phone. Just me and the night air. The next morning, I made a list. 1. Change the locks. 2. Separate the accounts. 3. Cancel her gym membership. 4. Move everything she left behind into the garage. 5. Don't look back. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about punishing her. It was about clarity, reclaiming the space that had slowly, silently filled with her secrets. By noon, the locksmith was at the door. He was chatty, polite. Asked if I'd recently bought the house. I just nodded and said, "You could say that." He laughed, not getting it. That was fine. After he left, I went to the bedroom. Opened drawers she used to fill. Now mostly empty, just a few forgotten scarves, a bracelet she hadn't worn in years, a grocery receipt with a heart drawn on the back. I didn't look too closely. Didn't want to know who the heart was for. I boxed it all up. Marked it with her name. Left it in the garage, just in case she came back for it. But I didn't tell her it was there. Later that week, I called our bank. Split the joint account. Closed the one tied to the Audi. She'd taken the car. I didn't want it anyway. There's something sacred about reclaiming space. The act of removing things that no longer carry love. Her coffee mugs, her shoes at the door, the bathrobe that always hung behind the bedroom door. Gone. Not trashed. Just relocated. I found myself breathing easier. Nights were quiet. Sometimes too quiet. But the guest room became unnecessary again. I slept in our bed, my bed, without guilt. Without the sense that someone else's ghost was lying beside me, turned away. I started eating simpler. Eggs. Toast. Rice bowls. Nothing complicated. Nothing shared. And it tasted better than it had in months. One night, Ben called. My oldest friend, my college roommate, the guy who knew me before I was anyone's husband. "She's gone?" he asked. "Yeah." Took a suitcase and a hollow apology. What's the house feel like now? I paused. Big. He chuckled, but then went quiet. You okay? I think so. I'm not spiraling. I'm not angry. I'm just still. Ben was silent for a beat. Then he said, peace disguised as pain. That stuck with me. Because that's exactly what it was. The ache of solitude. The echo of absence. But underneath it, under the layers of hurt and shock, there was stillness. And stillness is where things grow again. I started waking up earlier. Not because I had to, just because I could. I jogged in the mornings. Listened to podcasts. Let the sun hit my face without checking my phone for a text that wasn't coming. At work, I was sharper. My colleagues noticed. You seem lighter, one of them said. I just smiled. Working on it. Nora texted once, just a short message. He's gone. Took a few things and left. I'm okay. Just wanted you to know. I replied, I'm glad. If you need anything, I'm here. No flirting. No pretense. Just two people standing at the edge of their own wreckage, waving across the silence. Lily didn't reach out. No calls. No texts. No dramatic reappearance. But part of me expected it. Like a storm you know hasn't passed just because the clouds parted. Still, I didn't live waiting for it. I just lived. One morning, while folding laundry, something I used to avoid, I found one of her socks mixed in with my clothes. Pale blue with a small stitched moon near the toe. The kind of detail you only notice when you've loved someone for a long time. I held it for a moment, then tossed it into the donation bag without ceremony. Love doesn't always leave in a blaze. Sometimes it fades like a song that played too long, until you stop hearing it. Sometimes the clean break isn't a moment. It's a series of small, quiet choices that you make until you realize you've already moved on. It was Nora's idea. Let's talk to him, she said, her voice calm through the phone. I don't want him thinking he got away with it just because he slithered out the back door. I was in the middle of folding laundry again, something I now did with surprising regularity. Her words stopped me mid-sock. You sure? I asked. We already know everything we need. Maybe, she said, but I want to look him in the eye. I want him to see what he broke. There was something in her voice, not anger, not bitterness. Something sharper, cleaner, a line drawn in sand. I understood it, and so we made a plan. No drama, no ambush, just presence, truth, standing still and unshakable. We met outside her house the next evening, just as the sun was falling behind the rooftops. She wore black jeans, a loose white blouse, and no jewelry. Minimalist. Like armor, made of simplicity. You ready? She asked as I pulled up. I've been ready since the moment I saw him touch her hand. She nodded. Then let's get this over with. We walked inside. Nora's place still smelled faintly of something floral, lavender, or jasmine. A diffuser sat quietly on the shelf near the stairs. The house was tidy, but not staged. Real. Lived in. Stripped now of Adrian's things, at least the ones he hadn't taken. She had boxed the rest. Left them by the door. She'd texted him earlier. I'd like to speak. You can come by at 7. Not a request. No response. But we knew he'd show. People like Adrian didn't like unanswered questions. They liked control. Sure enough, at 7:02, the knock came. Nora opened the door. He stood there, casual as ever. Dark jeans, open collar. Hairstyled. Just enough cologne to announce himself without overpowering. That arrogant ease hadn't left him. Nora, he said, offering a tight smile. I didn't think you'd want to. You thought wrong. She cut in, stepping aside. Come in. He hesitated when he saw me. Oh, he said. You brought backup. No, I said. She didn't bring anyone. I'm here for myself. He blinked, but said nothing. We sat in the living room. Adrian on one end of the couch, Nora across from him. Me beside her, but angled toward him. The dynamic was clear. He wasn't in control anymore. Nora spoke first. 6 months, she said quietly. That's how long you've been lying to me. He opened his mouth, but she held up a hand. Don't. Just don't. You don't get to pretend anymore. He shut his mouth. I didn't call you here to ask why, she continued. I don't care about your reasons. I don't want your guilt. I just wanted you to look at me and admit it. No more games. No more mentorship or strategy sessions. Just the truth. Adrian shifted, clearly uncomfortable now. Okay, he said. It happened. I made a mistake. Stop calling it that, I said. A mistake is forgetting a birthday. What you did was a decision. Repeated. Intentional. He looked at me, jaw tightening. Fine. I made a choice. A selfish one. I didn't mean for it to go as far as it did. But it did, Nora said. And you didn't stop it. You lied every single day, Adrian. You made me feel like I was paranoid for noticing. Like I was crazy. I know, he murmured. I'm sorry. Keep your apology, she said, her voice suddenly colder. You didn't come here to make things right. You came because you didn't want to look like a coward. Well, congratulations. Now we've all seen who you really are. He looked away. I studied him for a moment. There was no satisfaction in seeing him humbled. Just a strange, almost clinical understanding. This was the man who had helped tear apart two homes. And now he sat here, shoulders sagging, trying to shrink in the space he once dominated. Nora stood. I won't drag this out, she said. Your things are by the door. Please don't come back. Don't call. Don't send emails. I'm not interested in explanations or redemption arcs. He stood slowly, almost stunned. You know, he said quietly to her. You're colder than I expected. Nora tilted her head. No, I'm just done confusing dignity with silence. He looked like he wanted to say more, but he didn't. He picked up the two boxes near the door and left without another word. The door clicked shut behind him. Nora let out a long, slow breath. And just like that, it was done. Not healed. Not over. But done. We sat back down, not speaking for a while. Finally, I said, you were incredible. She gave a tired smile. I didn't feel incredible. I felt like I was holding my insides together with dental floss. That's what strength is, I think. She looked at me. Do you ever wonder how long they would have kept it going? All the time. She shook her head. There's a version of this where we never knew. Where we lived quietly next to strangers, convincing ourselves everything was fine. Yeah, I said. But we're not in that version. No, she agreed. We chose the harder one. But the right one. We didn't talk much more that night. I left a little after 10. She walked me to the door. Before I stepped out, she touched my arm. Thank you, Ethan, for not letting me walk through this alone. You didn't let me either. She smiled, small, tired, real. As I drove home, I realized something strange. The pain was still there, but it wasn't the loudest thing anymore. What lingered was something quieter. Something like relief. The truth had finally taken the room, and it wasn't going anywhere. She came back on a Tuesday. It had been 19 days since she left. I was working from home that day, sitting at the dining table with my laptop open and a lukewarm mug of coffee nearby. The sun had started to sink behind the houses, casting long shadows across the floor. Then I heard the knock. Not a frantic knock. Not a hesitant one. Just 3 calm, deliberate taps. I knew before I opened the door. Lily stood there in a denim jacket I hadn't seen in a while, her hair pulled back, face bare. She was holding a small tote bag, the same one she used to take to yoga. Something about that detail almost made me laugh. Hey, she said softly. Hey, I replied. No emotion, just neutral gravity. Can I come in? I looked at her for a long second, then stepped aside. She walked in like it was still her home, even though her presence felt foreign now. A painting left in a hotel room by accident. Out of place. She glanced around, almost startled by how little had changed. Looks the same. It was never about how it looked, I said. She nodded, moving toward the couch, but didn't sit. She turned back, toward me instead. I wanted to talk. Okay. I've been staying with a friend, she said. Claire, from the office. She let me crash on her couch for a while. I didn't know where else to go. I didn't respond. Not out of cruelty, just restraint. I let her talk. I've been thinking about us, she continued, wringing her hands. And I realized how quickly it all fell apart. How fast I let something meaningless ruin everything we had. I raised an eyebrow. Meaningless. She caught herself. I mean, not meaningless, but not worth losing you over. Adrian and I, we weren't in love. It wasn't even about him, really. It was about me. Feeling seen. Feeling wanted again. I stayed quiet. She took a breath. I miss you, Ethan. I miss us. I know I messed up. Badly. But I think we can fix this. I think. No, I said gently. She blinked. What? I motioned to the chair across from me. Sit. She obeyed, slowly, cautiously, like she didn't know who she was talking to anymore. Truth was, she didn't. I folded my hands together. Lily, I'm not punishing you. I'm protecting peace. She opened her mouth, but I held up a hand. You didn't just betray me physically. You dismantled our trust, piece by piece. You lied with your eyes. You created entire fake afternoons and gave parts of yourself to someone else, while keeping just enough of you here to make me think it wasn't happening. Tears welled up in her eyes. I know, she whispered. And I'm sorry. I'm sure you are, I said. But this isn't about sorry. This is about truth. And the truth is, I'm not angry anymore. I'm not even sad. She stared at me, confusion overtaking her features. I've grieved, I continued. Grieved who I thought you were. Grieved the life I thought we were building. But that's over. Not because I want revenge. Not because I hate you. But because peace costs something. And for me, it costs distance. A tear slipped down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. You used to reach for me in your sleep, I said quietly. Do you remember that? She nodded, eyes down. I haven't felt that in over a year. Another tear. I kept asking myself if you still loved me. If maybe I'd done something to push you away. But you didn't drift. You withdrew. Deliberately. She looked up at me. People make mistakes, Ethan. People lose their way. I agree, I said. And sometimes, they don't find their way back. That's the part we don't like to admit. That some damage isn't reversible. She shook her head. But we were good once. We were, I said. And I'll always be grateful for those years. But I won't sacrifice my future on the altar of our past. She looked like she wanted to fight, to say something. But she saw in my face what I had already decided. So that's it, she asked. That's peace, I said. She wiped her cheek finally, nodded. Okay. I stood, walked to the door, opened it. She followed, slowly. At the threshold, she paused. You won't even think about it? About trying again someday? I looked at her. At the woman I once loved. The woman who had chosen someone else, while keeping my name in her mouth and my home under her feet. I think about it just long enough, I said, to remember why I shouldn't. She didn't reply. She stepped out. I closed the door gently behind her. That night, I lit a candle in the living room. No ceremony, no symbolism, just something small that burned quietly in the dark. I poured a glass of wine, turned on a record, an old jazz album I'd forgotten we even owned. Then I sat on the couch and just existed. And for the first time, I didn't feel haunted. Not by questions, not by what-ifs, not by her, just stillness, and the warmth of knowing I had chosen myself. The strange thing about healing is how quietly it arrives. No fanfare, no morning where you sit up and say, I'm over it. It comes like moss, slow, patient, finding life in the cracks left behind by the wreckage. That's how it was for me. After Lily's return attempt, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt still, more like someone who had finished crossing a long, cracked bridge and was now staring at the quiet land ahead, unsure how to walk on something solid again. I wasn't chasing distraction. I wasn't looking to be seen again. I just wanted simplicity, realness, a life where I didn't have to second-guess every glance, every late text, every sudden shift in tone. Nora reached out again a few days later. She texted, hiking this weekend. It's nothing fancy, just trees and silence. Interested? I stared at the message for a moment, thumb hovering over the screen. I almost said no, not because I didn't want to see her, but because I was afraid of what that might mean. But healing isn't passive. Sometimes you have to say yes to something good, even if you're still limping. I wrote back. I could use some trees and silence. We met at the trailhead just after 9 a.m. She wore a gray hoodie and old trail shoes. Hair tied up. No makeup. Just present. Hey, she said, handing me a thermos. Tea. Hope you're not a coffee snob. Only on weekdays. We started walking. The trail was damp, covered in fallen leaves. Autumn was starting to settle in. Gold and rust dripping from the trees like the forest was quietly letting go of things. Seemed fitting. We didn't talk much at first. Just walked. Breathed. Let the silence stretch and settle, not as a gap, but as something shared. It wasn't awkward. It was grounding. Halfway up the ridge, she finally said, You look lighter. I feel lighter, I replied. Still tired. But the right kind of tired. She nodded. Me too. A pause. Then, almost like a confession, I was afraid I'd come out of all this angry. Bitter. The kind of woman who sees betrayal in every smile. Understandable, I said. But then I realized if I let this make me bitter, I'm still letting him shape me. That hit deep. We reached a clearing and sat on a fallen log. The view stretched out in front of us. Hills fading into mist, the occasional hawk circling in the sky. She handed me the thermos. Peace disguised as tea, she said. I smiled. You remembered. I remember a lot, she said. Not about them. About us. The way we handled it. No yelling. No vengeance. Just truth. I nodded. It wasn't easy. No. But it was honest. And I think that's why it's sticking. I looked at her, really looked. She wasn't the woman I met at that front porch weeks ago. She was standing straighter. Laughing easier. Not healed, but healing. And I felt that same reflection in myself. We talked for hours. About music. Travel. What we wanted to build next. Not together, necessarily, but in general. For ourselves. That became a rhythm. Not dates, not courting, just shared space. A hike. A bookstore visit. Dinner at a quiet place where no one knew our names. The conversations weren't about pain anymore. They were about what came after. One night, we sat in her kitchen drinking wine, and she asked, "Do you ever think about what it would have been like if we met under different circumstances?" I didn't rush to answer. Then I said, "I used to. And now? Now I think maybe we met exactly when we needed to. Not for rescue. For recognition." She smiled. "Yeah, that sounds about right." Neither of us was rushing toward a label. We weren't pretending we were fine or trying to glue together what someone else shattered. We were rebuilding. Separately, but with windows that faced each other. I started going to therapy. Real therapy, not the half-hearted couple sessions Lily once dragged us to. My therapist said something in the second session that stuck with me. Sometimes, surviving is the loudest kind of love you can give yourself. She was right. I didn't want to date for a while. I didn't want to explain myself to new people, retell the story of my failed marriage like it was a badge or a wound. I just wanted to be present, honest, untangled. Nora and I weren't together, but we weren't apart either. We were something in the in-between. Two people who walked through the same fire and found each other standing, charred but intact. One evening, we sat on a park bench near the lake. She asked, "Are you afraid of falling again?" "Yes," I said, "but I'm more afraid of staying down." She nodded. "Me too." That was enough. Not declarations. Not plans. Just that simple, mutual truth. I looked at the water, the way it caught the fading light. And I realized something I hadn't dared to feel in months. Hope. Not in a person. Not in a promise. In myself. In the possibility of something quiet. Something steady. Something earned. I signed the divorce papers on a Thursday. There was no final argument, no desperate appeal from Lily. Just a legal courier, a manila envelope, and a sharp-tipped pen. I read every word, not because I expected surprises, but because it felt like I owed that version of myself, the one who stood at an altar years ago, blinking back hope, the dignity of attention. When I signed the last page, I didn't feel relief. I felt release. Somewhere in those lines of legal language, something that had been tangled inside me for months, loosened. Not gone, but lighter. I closed the envelope, sealed it, and slid it into the outgoing mail tray by the front door. That same afternoon, I sold the house. Not out of spite. Not to erase the past. Just because it wasn't home anymore. I'd spent too many mornings walking through rooms that held echoes instead of memories. The kitchen where we once danced barefoot. Now just a place where coffee cooled beside silence. The hallway where laughter used to spill over, now hollow. I realized I had been living inside a monument to something that no longer existed. So I let it go. The new place was smaller, a 2-bedroom near the lake. Nothing extravagant. Clean lines. Open windows. A porch that caught the morning sun and a view of water that reminded me every day, time moves forward, whether you're ready or not. I filled it slowly, piece by piece. No rush to decorate. Just function and peace. A bookshelf I built myself. A table I refinished over 2 weekends. Art that spoke to me, not us. There was something therapeutic about building a life alone, not in sadness, but in clarity. One Sunday morning, I stood barefoot on that porch with a mug of black coffee. The wind off the lake was crisp. Early leaves had started to turn, dabs of amber and rust catching the sunlight. The air smelled like pine and clean distance. That's when Nora pulled up. She stepped out of her car wearing a navy sweater and jeans, holding a paper bag in one hand and 2 travel mugs in the other. "Bribery?" I asked. "Croissants," she said, lifting the bag. "And strong coffee. The grown-up kind." I smiled. "You always show up when the light's good." She stepped onto the porch and handed me a mug. It's the only time I believe people mean what they say. Mornings make liars out of fewer people. We sat in the porch chairs, watching the lake breathe. There was no urgency between us, no pressure. We weren't trying to make anything happen, just letting something be. After a long silence, the kind that feels like music instead of absence, she turned to me. Do you ever think about the what-ifs? I considered that, stirred the coffee in my hands. Sometimes, I admitted, I think about what might have happened if I'd noticed earlier, if I'd spoken up more, or if Lily had, if we'd caught the cracks before they split the whole thing open. Nora nodded. Me too. But, I added, I don't live there. She looked over. Where do you live now? I gestured to the lake. Right here. A soft laugh escaped her lips. Simple as that. Not simple. Earned. She leaned back in her chair. You know, it's strange. I never thought I'd feel calm again. Not after Adrian. Not after what I saw in his eyes the night he left. But now, I sleep. I breathe. I don't flinch when my phone dings. That's how you know, I said. Know what? That the storm's over. Not because the rain stops, but because you stop waiting for it. She smiled at that. We finished our coffee, split the croissants, and talked about books. Places we might travel, not together, not yet. But maybe, eventually. No expectations. Just curiosity. The sun rose higher. And I realized something. This wasn't a recovery anymore. It was a life. A life not defined by betrayal or loss or the ache of what used to be, but by choice. Daily, intentional choice. To be honest. To be whole. To let go of noise and stand still enough to feel peace when it finally showed up. Lily was part of my story. So was the pain. But they were no longer the ending. I didn't chase closure anymore. I didn't check old photos. I didn't rehearse conversations that would never happen. I just lived. Later that afternoon, Nora left with a hug and a smile. No promises. Just warmth. I watched her drive away, the taillights disappearing down the tree-lined road. And then I went back inside, sat on the couch, listened to the wind. No ghosts. No wondering. Just stillness. And that, I realized, was more than enough.